Hello and welcome to Good Morning UK Have Your Say, a Force for Good's mid-morning show coming to you live from our nerve centre here in the heart of the great British city of Glasgow with me, your host, Alistair McConaughey. And thank you very much for tuning in, and we're broadcasting live today across our Facebook, YouTube and Twitter platforms, and already Linda is saying hello. Good to see you again, Linda from southeast London, and of course TC is in as always. Good morning to all fellow Unionists from all over our wonderful United Kingdom, and more about our wonderful United Kingdom today in the programme. McGregor from Edinburgh, good to see you. Good to see all you guys in here, and James as well over on Facebook. And you know, what a day today. Madam Sturgeon is going to be appearing in front of a Holyrood committee. Now, the Tories have already put out a message saying that they believe new evidence proves beyond doubt that she broke the ministerial code and that she should resign. And, well, we'll be hearing more from her today when she sits in front of this committee and goes, "It wasn't me, it wasn't me, it was him." And people will no doubt make up their mind. But the question, folks, is she going to resign? Because wouldn't that be wonderful? Wouldn't it be wonderful if we could purge the Sturge? And is this the time that we're going to purge the Sturge? Is Humza going to get the heave, and is Swinney going to get in the binny? Wouldn't that be wonderful? What a present that would be prior to the 6th of May elections, which are only 9 weeks away. And they are happening, by the way. They are happening, the elections. Good morning to Morwena. Great to see you from Cornwall. And to Tommy. Good morning, troops. Good morning to you, Tommy, and to Alan as well. And there's Ryan. Good morning from God's own country of Yorkshire. And also Graham there. Graham, good morning, Scotland. Good morning, the great Sharon. Good morning to you, Sharon. Hope you're well this morning. And Lee's looking in from the Netherlands. British lass living in the Netherlands. Wonderful that you can see us, Lee. Good for you. Hope you're well. And Catherine, good morning, Great Britain. Caroline, good morning. No room for Nicolaya to hide today. Exactly. No room for her to hide. She's now in the hot seat and it's all coming down upon her head. But will she be able to survive it? You know, she does have an amazing penchant for survival. There's no question about that. Good morning to you, Ray, and to Amy as well, and to Ibrox Park from County Down, and May from Fife, and Mark. That's great stuff. Now, folks, please send in your thoughts. And there's Nelson. Good morning to all Brits. Send in your thoughts. Do we believe that will Sturgeon resign before the 6th of May election? That's our question to you. Is this really going to happen? You know, a few months ago we would have said, no, there's no chance. But that was before the media actually were looking at all of this. You know, she was getting an easy ride from the entire British media, and the entire British media was not interested at all. And to the extent that it was interested, it was, as we always say, running interference for her, making excuses and just overlooking the negativity. But things have definitely changed. Things have definitely changed. Now, folks, so I'd be interested in your thoughts on that. Now, at 11 o'clock, we've got a guest coming in. It's going to be our co-director of A Force for Good. I know many of you will be interested to see who that is. It's a fantastic gentleman called Ronnie Kane, and he's going to be giving his words of wisdom on this particular issue as well. That's at the top of the hour, and before the top of the hour we'll have our competition as well, which will be based upon this day in British history, which we'll talk about in 10 minutes. Desmond, good morning, Great Britain, from an Ulster Scot living in Germany. Good morning, Desmond, good to see you. And Ian says, justice must be done today. Justice must be done because her arrogance is shocking, as Scott points out. And Caroline says, no, she'll stay, but she should resign. And I get that feeling, is she really going to resign before the 6th of May? No, she's probably not. But who knows what could come out? Because there is an independent committee that's looking at whether or not she has broken the ministerial code. And according to Alan Cochrane here in the Daily Telegraph, if this separate independent ethics inquiry by a leading Irish barrister, to which Salmond has submitted evidence, concludes that she did break the ministerial code, then she will have to resign. She will have to resign, and that's the Scottish political editor of the Telegraph saying that. So it just depends then upon this the independence of this particular committee and whether it is going to have the courage to do the right thing. So we could be seeing the Sturge purged. We could be purging the Sturgeon, which would be just an astonishing turn-up for the books, but not before time, because for 14 years these guys have been getting away with basically doing whatever they want simply because they can claim to be nationalists and as such not held to the same standards as all other politicians appear to be held to. And James just says she won't go, she wants to retain total control over us. She certainly does want to retain that. Whether the confluence of powers will be such that she'll be forced out is going to be very interesting. And you know, this could happen. A few months ago, people were thinking that the SNP are going just to steamroller through this election again, and they're going to be re-elected with a massive majority, blah, blah, blah. But things are really changing. You can feel it in the air, you know. I spoke that, will Humza get the heave? It's very possible that Humza Yousaf will lose his Glasgow Pollock seat, because he's not standing on the regional list at all. He's standing only on the first past the post, and he could get caught up in all of this. And, you know, he deserves to lose his Glasgow Pollock seat. And wouldn't that be absolutely amazing justice for him after he brought in this horrible anti-free speech law, which is going to get voted on by Parliament at the end of March? Wouldn't it be wonderful if as a consequence of that, he actually lost his seat and was no longer in Holyrood? And that could come. I can see that happening. I can see that happening, folks. And we're going to do whatever we can to ensure that comes to pass. That's for sure. Jordan says if she goes, she would just blame it on Westminster. A lot of her fans are already blaming it on MI5 and the secret British state that doesn't actually exist. Hey, good morning to you, John. British and proud. And well, somebody who's been amazing these days has indeed been Jackie Bailey, and she's been very good. She's been the star of all of this, as Brian points out there. And just what we were saying there, Ryan goes, will she resign? It depends upon the impartiality. That's the word I was looking for. The impartiality of the Ethics Committee and what their recommendations will be after they've drawn their conclusions. Nelson thinks Humza wants Sharia law. Well, the thing with Humza is, you know, if you're a true believing Muslim, you wouldn't actually support Humza because he just goes along with the secularism of the Scottish secular state. He's not like a godly Muslim in any sense of the term, Humza. You know, he's just kind of corrupted by secularism. So I don't know why he even gets the Muslim vote. You know, a true believing Muslim. Why on earth would you vote for somebody like Humza Yousaf? Richard says, Humza and Sturgeon want to take our liberty for the sake of freedom. That's true. That's all part of the Scottish state, which has been getting really panned in the media. Something rotten at the nationalist core, says this Daily Telegraph editorial. But they also point out here, that the system has proved so flawed and the SNP so supremely arrogant, it does not occur to Mr. Salmond that he helped to create that environment, and has also been pointed out by Charles Moore. It's the Unionist establishment in Britain that also allowed this corruption to go ahead in their own creation. That Unionists, at least the political Unionists who run the show, have to share some blame as well, because it was the British Parliament that set up Holyrood and allowed this farce to continue, and allowed these little children to basically steal all the sweeties. Well, Ian says here, is there a danger that a redeemed Salmon may lead the party again if Sturgeon resigns? He's more old-school centrist compared to Sturgeon and could once again rejuvenate the party. It's a good question, Ian. I just feel that his brand has been tainted so much that it's unlikely he can come back. So that would be my answer. I don't think so. If it wasn't for all the things that happened in his past, he probably could. But at this stage, I don't see him making a comeback. I can't see that at all. I think it's going to now move into a more kind of fruitcake angle, which will possibly be an unelectable angle. Certainly under the Angus Robertsons and Joanne Cherries and the Pete Wisharts and all these sorts of people, they're going to take it in a fruitcake direction, which is really going to end up in the bin. Basically, it's not going to appear to be credible once Sturgeon goes. Yeah. So we've got our interview coming up. As Sharon says, Salmon would be a liability. Totally. That has to be the case there. And well, yeah, you're right, Anne. If there is one man to blame for all of this, and everybody who voted it. What's this here? Aye. So, what I'm just going to do now for 2 or 3 minutes is just to do a This Day in British History moment. And the reason why we always do our This Day in British History is because we want to understand how we arrived at what we have today, and therefore we want to appreciate the value of it. So we always do This Day in British History, and it's upon this particular little story that we always base our competition at the top of the hour as well. So, and we tell these stories, as we said last week, so that the mystic chords of memory may be stirred to appreciate the things which bind us together, in order that the better angels of our nature may be awakened, as Abraham Lincoln said. Now, it was on this day that a certain person came to Prestwick Airport, and this is the first time that this person ever came to Britain, and that person never came back since, and it was their only visit to Britain. Now, does anybody know who I might be talking about? On this day, on the 3rd of March in 1960, a certain man came to Prestwick Airport, and Scotland was never the same since, and we've remembered that day ever since. And of course, I am talking about the one and only, the great Elvis Presley, set foot in Scotland on this day, on the 3rd of March 1960. And we'll put up that on our Facebook page later today. And it's a good wee story of one of the girls who got to meet him when he came off the plane and got an autograph. Anne Murphy, who was then aged 16, was one of those lucky enough to meet the man who sold more than 600 million records. And she says here, I used to babysit for a Sergeant Phelps at the US Air Base. I was at work one day when he turned up at my house and told my mum that Elvis would be at the airbase that night and I should go if I wanted to see him. My mum ran to the phone box to call me at work and I couldn't believe it. I had all his records. And when he arrived at the airport, he was shown about by Lieutenant Colonel Ed Miller, now retired, who lives in Ayrshire. And he says, I got the job as Sergeant Presley's escort, probably because I was a professional musician before the war. And I like this bit. He was an extremely pleasant, sincere young man who took the time and trouble to speak to everyone he met. The lucky few fans who were in the right place at the right time were left with the memory of a lifetime. And that was today on the 3rd of March in 1960 at Prestwick Airport, where the US Air Force used to have a base and where they would stop off on flights to refuel between North America and Europe. And yeah, TC got that one right. TC got that one right. That was 3rd of May 1960. Sorry, 3rd of March 1960, on this day in 1960. Yeah. Absolutely, James. Elvis, absolutely. Good. Okay, now back to the fish fight that's basically going on. The fish fight that's going on in the Scottish Parliament. And it's a consequence of the Scottish National Party not being properly held to account by the media that we have here in Scotland and indeed throughout the United Kingdom. And we saw that as well, of course, with, we've got the Lord Advocate and so on, who is not only the Crown Prosecutor, but also sits with the Scottish administration in their cabinet. So that's clearly, that shouldn't be happening. And if we had a proper media holding the politicians to account here in Scotland, then that would not be happening either. So we're all hoping that Sturgeon is going to resign before the 6th of May election. But if she doesn't, we are still going to ensure that we are going to be campaigning against her as much as possible. Now, it was mentioned yesterday, there was a statement in Holyrood that it's on. It's definitely going on, because there was some people saying last week, it should be cancelled. But no, it's definitely on. It's the 6th of May, and the polling stations are going to be open. Now, what they're also doing, and this is an unfortunate thing, is that they are trying to really ramp up the level of postal voting to the point, and this is unbelievable, but to the point where the SNP is actually sending out unsolicited letters inside where you get a postal vote application form that's already pre-populated with your name and address. And this is a letter from the SNP with a pre-populated postal vote application form that all you need to do is sign and send it to the returning officer. They're sending that out along with a leaflet, vote SNP. I mean, that should not be happening, really. They're obviously doing it because there's no law that specifically prohibits it, but that's just basically manipulating the system, and they're learning from the manipulation of the mail-in ballots that happened at the 2020 American election, where there was so many mail-in ballots that they could not simply be verified properly. And there is a danger if we move to largely postal voting, which is what they're trying to move it to, that we will end up corrupting our democracy. Because postal voting should only be for those who are not well enough or frail to the point that they can't get to the polling station. That's what postal ballots were meant to do. But what they're trying to do now is to just get everybody onto the postal system. And a postal system can be easily corrupted, because if you have millions of postal votes, you simply do not have the time and energy and ability to check the signatures to make sure that everybody who says they are who they are. Now, that's a concern for us here in Scotland and throughout the United Kingdom, because whatever some people may say, the British democratic system has been very good and is run extremely well. And it was only when postal voting came in when it was pushed heavily, that the system started to get corrupted. We're still at the stage where we can row back from that and get to a proper system again. But if they are going to continue now to just push postal voting as the norm, then we do have an issue with the potential corruption of our democracy. And the person that was giving the speech yesterday in Holyrood was saying that they expect possibly up to 40% of people voting by mail. Now, that's going to be so many people that I don't know how those numbers are going to be properly verified. When you send in your postal ballot, how is the person who counts that going to know that you are who you are? That's going to be hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people voting by post, which is not verifiable properly. And so that's a bad way to move, and we shouldn't be going in that direction. We shouldn't be going in that direction. Anything but that, quite frankly. So that's a bad sign that's coming in, is the move to postal voting. And it's all the usual suspects who are promoting this. Sadiq Khan heavily promoting that the safest way to vote is to vote by post. And others like the SNP heavily promoting postal votes. And that's a very bad sign. Just something, the watchman in the wings here, just telling you that's something to look out for, because that's not a good sign that that's going on there. Back to some comments here. We've got our man coming up at the top of the hour, Ronnie Kane, who is our co-director here at A Force for Good. And that's the danger, is that it does a bit smell like things that shouldn't be going on there, Paul. TC says, George Galloway is spitting feathers at the SNP's attempt to suppress all others standing against the SNP this May. Well, I guess what you mean there is that it's going to be hard for small parties like Galloway's and the others that are out there, such as Abolish the Scottish Parliament Party and so on, to actually campaign and indeed to be heard. And that's another problem with the postal ballots, is that they get sent out sort of mid-April, at least 3 weeks before the actual end of the campaign. So people will tend to get their postal ballot, fill it in straight away and send it back, and there's still 3 weeks to go before the end of the campaign, and anything could happen in those 3 weeks. For example, you could vote for Nicola Sturgeon mid-April via your postal ballot, only to find that she resigns a week before the election. So, you know, you're voting on things that's not fully completed yet. So the postal ballot is encouraging people to vote before the end of the campaign. Now, who does that benefit? That only benefits the major parties, those parties that are already known about, those parties who already have the mass media beaming them into everybody's houses. It doesn't help the little party in your area who delivers a really good leaflet 1 week before the polling day and you read it and you think, oh, I wish I had voted for them. Well, you can't vote for them anymore because you've already voted 2 weeks ago. So postal ballots they work against small parties because they encourage people to vote quickly before they have all the information and before the end of the campaign has been properly concluded. So they're wrong all round. Postal ballots are wrong all round, but people who want to manipulate the system will promote postal voting for their own particular ends. And that's a concern. Postal voting tends to corrupt the system. No question about that. Nelson says, let's call it as it is. The SNP are devious and full of skullduggery. They certainly are. They certainly are. And, you know, we mustn't, as a people, we must not give them another session in Parliament. We must not give them our authority to be in again, because a really good article by Tom Harris, which I'll mention earlier. He was a Labour MP, and he's just talking here about how this is in the Daily Mail at the weekend on the 27th of February, and he's saying that if we vote for these guys, it's going to be an endorsement of its dogmatic approach, an endorsement of everything that is wrong, and it's going to be an endorsement of Yusuf's efforts to also, it will be a stamp of approval by an electorate on Yusuf's assault on free speech. And that's why we have to give Humza the heave. We have to give hopeless Humza the heave. He has to lose in Glasgow Pollock, and he has to lose hard. I mean, he cannot be rewarded for his anti-free speech carry-on, for his anti-free speech efforts. He has to be punished electorally for that, and we're going to do what we can. Watch this space. Now, just before the top of the hour, I'm going to, and before we bring in our guest, who I see is in the waiting room, we are going just here to give you our competition. Now, the competition is for this little box of mints, which is from Stewart's of Scotland. And it's a nice little tin here of 40 quality mints, and it's got a lovely London bus passing, and it's got the Union Jack in the corner. And this is part of their London collection of mints. And that's going to the first person who sends in the correct answer. And you have to send it by email, please. And please send it to this email, which is contact@aforceforgood.uk. That's the only email we'll be checking for the answer to this question. And we'll announce the winner at the bottom of the hour, just before we finish. And the question is, in what year did the King of Rock and Roll visit and land in Prestwick Airport? In what year did Elvis arrive in Prestwick Airport? That's to the first person who sends us the answer at contact@aforceforgood.uk, and these will be winging their way to that person later this afternoon, along with a copy of our latest Union Heart. Fantastic. Okay. Now, it is the top of the hour, and I have the one and only Ronnie Kane in the waiting room. I'm going to bring him in. Ronnie is our co-director, and please do say hello to Ronnie. And we're going to talk about purging the Sturgeon and giving Humza the heave, and what are the likelihood of them actually losing this 6th of May. So, hello, Ronnie.
Hello, Alistair. Good morning
Hi.
to you.
Good morning to you, and good to see you there. And you're looking good this morning.
Feeling
How are
good.
things? You're feeling good as well. Excellent. Well, we're feeling good as well because we're on we're, for the first time in a long time, we're feeling hopeful that in fact the shine is coming off the SNP. It should have come off many years ago, of course, but as you know, we live in a society where the mass media basically bow down to the SNP. So this time they can't ignore what's going on. What are your thoughts about what is happening in Holyrood today?
Well, it certainly is an interesting time that we're living through at the moment. But I have said since the referendum of 2014 that following that, the wind has gone out of the sails of the SNP. And they remain in power because there is a flawed system which reduces the support, if you like, or the voting for the three Unionist parties. And they're still a minority, and they need to be bolstered by another party. So we don't emphasise this enough, that we won the referendum. Unionist Scots voters came out in their droves, the highest turnout ever recorded, and it was a 10% lead. It wasn't 0.5%. It wasn't minuscule. It was a stonking 10%. And yet, they lost, and we've still got them ruling Scotland. And Sturgeon and her cohorts are abusing the very ethos of democracy. But of course, that goes back further still. I think there is a history lesson to be learned from it. And when Union Heart comes out, I don't suppose it'll be out in this, or you'll have time to put it into the special edition that's coming out. But that would be something to consider, is following how the SNP rose from being such a small and marginal party and is still a minority, but the tail is wagging the dog in Scotland. And that is not right. It has to be rectified. However, to come into the present day rather than remain in history, I saw Resignation Matters on Facebook yesterday, and there was 14 headings that were resignation matters for the First Minister, and 5 of them are headed up misleading Parliament by promising cooperation, misleading Parliament when complaints were known of, misleading Parliament what was said between Sturgeon and Salmon, misleading Parliament about a secret meeting, misleading Parliament by denying knowledge of how, can't read my own writing now, how the involvement was proceeding. So that's just a few things that are resignation matters. The fact is that the First Minister has been in breach of the ministerial code, and I'm reliably informed not once, not twice, and that would be enough for the First Minister to be resigning, but 38 times in breach.
Yes.
So this gives you an idea of the imbalance that there is in Holyrood. It's a flawed system. Not only is the building a disaster, the people who occupy it are creating the disaster that Scotland is in today. And this is something that has to be remedied. Holyrood is not an essential part of governing in Scotland. It is a luxury. It is a talking shop. It is doing nothing that the Scottish office cannot do in Scotland, as it used to be for something like 3 centuries. The Scottish office would be the link to Westminster. Now we have Holyrood, which is not a link to Westminster, it is diametrically opposed to Westminster. They are taking a stance. And I'm not talking just about the SNP. All of them were Remainers in Brexit.
Mm-hmm.
All of them supported remaining. I was one of the million and whatever voters in Scotland that voted for Brexit. There was no party supporting me.
It's a very good point, because on many issues there's actually more representation in Westminster for the opinions of many Scots than there is in Holyrood. As you say, at the Brexit referendum, there was no party leader who supported it. And on other issues such as Trident or immigration, there's far more, or stopping immigration, that is, there's far more representation among the diversity of MPs at Westminster. More people speaking for us at Westminster than speaking for us at Holyrood.
Yes.
Holyrood is very much they're all chums together, basically. Once you get into Holyrood, you get your big salary, you're seeing everybody every day, you're sitting in the canteen with them, you're standing shoulder to shoulder with them, being interviewed by STV or whatever, and you're all just big mates together. I mean, I saw a picture today of, there was, I won't name them, but it was a Liberal Dem MSP sitting in what looked like a car, and he goes, my friend Anas Sarwar, who's a Labour. Now, okay, you can be civil and friendly, but you don't have to be like tell the world how chummy you are with your political opposition. You know, it's you're not really meant to do that. You're meant to maintain a social distance between them, even if you're quite civil and polite with them, as you should be normally. You don't have to be telling everybody what a great, chum you are. No. With them, and that's chumocracy. It's a chumocracy, and a well-paid chumocracy, and a great sinecure if you get it.
What you've just described there is acceptable behaviour amongst people who support the United Kingdom, but their party loyalties are diverse. But the SNP are about destroying the United Kingdom. They are not one of us. They are separatists, and they don't want a United Kingdom, and they're doing their damnedest to break up the United Kingdom. So why is any politician of any other party so chummy with them? This is wrong. Separatists are seditionists, and that should be a crime. I have no intention of sitting on my backside and allowing these people, who again I repeat are the minority, the tail wagging the dog, and yet the people who are elected to Holyrood, the devolved assembly in Holyrood, and I don't give a fig for the Scotland Act or the powers that come out of Westminster authorising devolution. Devolution is a mistake, and it should be recognised as a mistake. And these people that are in Holyrood at the moment are doing no favours to the United Kingdom. They are, in fact, opposing the Westminster government. This is wrong. Devolution was about the power coming down to the people and in an ideal world, I suppose, working in concert with the real government.
Yes, exactly. That's how it was meant to be. It was meant to be like, we'll set this up so that you can do your stuff in Scotland, but it was assumed that you would want to do it in concert with the rest of the United Kingdom. There wasn't an idea we're going to set up the gallows that will hang ourselves, but that's in fact what got built. You know, the people at the time, Tony Blair and the Labour Party, they did build the gallows that they were to hang their own party upon. Absolutely. And that could have been changed. The time was right at 2014, as soon as we won considerably the referendum. Then the Tory government at the time should have gone straight in and made changes to the Scotland Act, which would secure the Union. But what instead they did was they gave more and more powers to the Scottish Parliament, which at that time was their political opposition. Okay, there's one thing giving powers to, like, if it had been a Tory party running Holyrood, giving more powers to a Tory party, giving more powers to another Tory party, I could understand that. But they actually gave these massive powers to their political opponents, and not just general opponents, but their absolutely committed opponents who hate their own guts. They gave those. That's the phrase I'm looking for. Mortal enemies. They gave all these new powers to their mortal enemies to use against them. And then they complained that for the last 7 years now, we've been in a constitutional mire. Well, of course, because that's what they set up. After 2014, they ensured that things would continue in this way, that Scotland would continue to be obsessed with the Constitution, because they made that happen after 2014 by giving more powers to their mortal enemies to use against themselves. They missed a fantastic opportunity, and we have to presume they missed that fantastic opportunity because they simply had no clue what they were doing. And I've come to believe that now, the more I've studied the British establishment in Westminster, is that they don't really understand how the United Kingdom is held together. They don't even understand that the Union is the United Kingdom. Like, they'll talk about the United Kingdom and the Union as if the two things are separate. But the two things are the same thing. You know, if you care about the United Kingdom, then you care about the Union. The clue is in the name. Absolutely. And without the Union, there is no United Kingdom. There is no remaining United Kingdom. Yeah. There's really only England, with Northern Ireland and Wales hanging perilously onto its coattails. So our job, and you and I have been extremely good at this, as have the whole AFFG team, is literally to educate our politicians about the nature of the Union. And we do see positive signs in that regard, but it's a big, hard fight. And, you know, we understand, you understand, I understand, the whole team that we rely upon here at A Force for Good understands very well the nature of what the United Kingdom is and how it's held together. And we are trying to promote it. Now, you mentioned there Union Heart and our special edition, which is coming up. We have a magazine that we publish occasionally. It's called Union Heart. The 4th issue is going to be a special edition. It's going to be at least 24 pages, maybe 36 pages, and it's going to be a policy issue, which is to say it's going to list what we believe are all the policies that a government should do if it wants to maintain the Union going forward, not just for the next 4 years, but for the next 100 years. Right. And so we'll be pushing that out, hopefully before the May election. But in April is when we're aiming to get it out, and it's going to be a good one. And that's for all the people. That will go to any Union supporter that requests it. Would you like to speak about our Union supporters campaign a little bit, Ronnie, and what exactly that is? Somebody just saying here, Yvonne says, if Ronald Kane was standing at election, I'd vote for him.
I read that myself there, and that's why I laughed. Sorry, what was the question again, Alison?
Just expand upon our Union supporters programme and the value of it.
Right, it's most important, and I think the support is absolutely essential. And to our supporters who are very loyal in supporting, I would just say that we will be going back out on the streets, counter-demonstrating, because the SNP won't give up their marching arm. So that's going to happen. And we need all the support that we can get. And for instance, I am still blessed to have a mother-in-law, even at my advanced years. There is someone on this planet older than I am. And she's going to be 97 next month.
Congratulations.
And she must be our oldest supporter. And I would just say that 15 years ago, she would have been out there waving the flag. No question about it. On more than one occasion, she was prepared to chain herself to a fence, to a railing, because she felt so strongly about certain things that were not right. Fortunately, for the sake of the family, their blushes were saved, that she never actually did it. But the point being, she had, and she still has, the right spirit. And what we want is more supporters, because it's vitally important that you carry on doing what you do. And this requires financial support. What you're doing could not be done without financial support. And so for everyone who does support us now, I say thank you very much. There are, for instance, no, I'm not going to go any further on that. I think I've expressed myself very well there. And I think we should get back to what's going on in Holyrood this morning. But before we do, Alistair, before you speak again, could I just say, picking up on a thread that you mentioned a few moments ago, the Prime Minister, I think, has realised that there is a problem about the Union and the United Kingdom and how it's perceived. And I've read reports that he's putting a substantial amount of money aside in order that there be a special team put together in order to beef up. Perhaps that's not the right expression.
Yes.
And the perception in Westminster probably of the United Kingdom. So I think the Prime Minister is on the right tracks there. Unfortunately, he's not going to get any support from Holyrood, who, as I've already said, are diametrically opposed to Westminster. Mm-hmm. All of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All of them have to go. But this morning, what we want is for the First Minister and a deputy, the chief of the civil service, and a couple of others to go. We have to get their resignation before we can move forward.
Well, do you know what, Ronnie? That's a good point to end on, because that could be coming. A few months ago, that would just have been out the question. But if this independent committee finds that she broke the ministerial code, then basically everybody believes that she will have to resign, and that could be a comeuppance for the books, but that's what she would have to do. And as you said at the start there, there's so many ways in which she has broken it, ways that would have confined a former Labour First Minister or MP or MSP simply to the wilderness, and she's done several of them, and she's only got away with it because of the sheer power. Now I'm going to bring this to a close. I just want to read out this from Ryan, who says, "Keep up the fantastic work, Ronnie. The Unionist cause will succeed with the determination and zeal as shown by fine gentlemen such as yourself and Alistair." Well, thank you very much, Ryan, for that lovely comment. Excellent. And you mentioned our Union Supporters Programme. These are people who donate around about £1.15 a week, which works out at £5 a month to our cause at
heartily
forceforgood.uk//
encourage people to do that. Yes.
Yeah. Union-supporters.
And if you've been paying a $5 a week for some time now, a month, then maybe consider increasing it if your circumstances permit.
Absolutely.
And why not? It's a good cause. We're not at all daunted by the fact that we're not a large organisation, but we feel strongly about the union, and we recognise in you, Alistair, someone who deserves not only to be supported on our counter demonstrations, but to be supported financially. And that's important too. Equally important, I would say.
Well, thank you very much for that comment, Ronnie. And I should mention to people as well that we do have several people who are retained on a very small retainer for our social media platforms on Instagram and on Facebook. They're all important, and we have somebody who is dedicated to sending materials to MSPs and MPs and opinion formers, and make sure that anybody who talks about the union in a positive way gets a copy of the Union Heart or a copy of the wee book, or a letter or a card to support them and help to stiffen their backbone. So we have people who are dedicated to doing all of those sorts of things.
Yes, absolutely. Any supporter that you've got an email address for, I would say to them, send you a quick email with their home address, and they will get a copy of the Union Heart. Yes,
the Union Heart is free. Just tell us that you want it at contact@aforceforgood.uk. Okay, Ronnie, I'm going to let you go. Okay. Thank you very much for that. Give my best wishes.
They're going to have to drag me out your waiting room.
Yes, and thank your mother-in-law. I know whom you're referring.
Yes, I will do.
A fantastic lady and a great supporter, a 97-year-old, and she's perhaps our most senior union supporter.
So.
Yes, fantastic. Okay, Ronnie, okay, I'll say goodbye.
I'll see you soon.
Cheers.
Bye.
Wonderful. The one and only Ronnie Kane, who is our co-director here at A Force for Good. Now, Ronnie was speaking there about, and I was also speaking there about policies. And policies for the union. And a fantastic article was written. And I thank very much the person who sent this to me and who sent it to me in time for this broadcast. And it's written by a man that we have a great deal of respect for, Professor Nigel Biggar. And it's my plan for defeating Sturgeon's devious SNP. And we're going to put this up on our Facebook page and put it out on our Twitter today. And it's extremely well done. And just in a few hundred words, he encapsulates, in a way that I've never seen before, what's wrong with all the various suggestions that people make to save the union, and he finishes with what you have to do to save the United Kingdom. For example, he points out here that, people don't want independence, so-called, because they think that's going to be the way to make the trains run on time. It's really a lot to do with actual identity, with a sense of identity. He points out that Scottish nationalists' hankering after independence is about the quasi-religious need to infuse lives with transcendent meaning, plugging the self into a grand national project. Which it so is, absolutely. And that's understandable. And there's nothing wrong with that as such. And he points out Scottish independence is more a moral vision than a practical solution. That's so well put. This is why arming Holyrood with more powers or federalising the UK will not suffice to save the Union. Economic arguments might restrain more sober voters, but probably not the adventurous young. Exposing the untruths and inconsistencies of the nationalist myth will help, and that's what we are always doing, but it's not enough. Above all, what is needed to save the Union is the development of a morally attractive story about Britain, with which Scots, especially the young, will want to identify. And this is what is so true, a morally attractive story about Britain. And we realised that back in 2012 when we set up a force for good, whose name itself is about moral identity, about Britain being a force for good. Because we understood from a very early age that being British was itself a moral identity, especially when people would say something like, well, you shouldn't do that because that's not British. Okay, you're infusing the identity with a sense of morality, and we've always had that in Britain and in the British identity. Perhaps other nations have it as well, but we certainly have it here in Britain. That's why it's so hurtful to many of us when we see people like Sturgeon or Hamza Yusuf doing things to our national constitution and to our national way of life which are simply not British and not acceptable. And of course, they're not the only ones who have been doing. Many governments in Westminster have been doing it as well. But things like the anti-free speech law completely goes against what it means to be British, because being British is about liberty. Many of the things that are happening today with the lockdown as well, very much against what we understand as our British liberties. And it's not British, it's not British to wear a mask and to be fearful of invisible ghosts in the air. That's just so wrong. Anyway, without me going down that route too much, let me see who has won our prize. And the question was, in what year did Elvis Presley come to Britain, to Prestwick Airport? And the answer, of course, was this day, the 3rd of March in 1960. And we do have a winner, and let me type up the winner's name here. And I'm glad to see who has won. It is Robert. Robert has won the mints. So they'll be winging your way to us, Robert. Please send us by that email again your address, and we will fire that off to you. And something I also want to give a plug to is our fantastic shopper. If you are going to the supermarket, okay, why not carry this amazing Hessian bag? Okay, it's really strong, really sturdy, very big, with strong loops, and basically this is better than your bag for life. This is better than a plastic bag for life, because what you'll find with the plastic bags for life is that they don't actually last for life. Okay, your plastic bag won't be a chum with you for life, but this Hessian shopper could very well be with you for life. In fact, you can get that at our shop, which the ticker there is strolling across the bottom, and it's also at a forceforgood.uk/shop-1, where you can not only get your Union Jack shoppers, but you can get lots of other things there as well, including our wee book for the union, and including cards, umbrellas, Union Jack flags, and the sort of things that we're going to need for activism. So check that out. Union Jack on both sides. And we sold a couple of those this week, which is why I was minded to put these in. Now, folks, if you've been watching on Twitter, if you retweet us with a comment, then we can retweet your tweet to 26,500 people. So click that retweet button, choose quote tweet, put in a good word for us, and we'll retweet your good words to 26,500 people. So that's a way that we can help you get heard. Now, we're also on rumble.com/UK A Force for Good. We back up all our Wednesday morning programs on Rumble, and we also back them up on BitChute as well. So if you follow on if you're on any of these, whether on BitChute or whether on Rumble, please do give us a follow. And we also today announcing for the first time that we are also on Gab as well, gab.com/UK A Force for Good. So if you're on Gab, give us a follow there as well, please. So basically, we are spreading ourselves around as much as possible in order to have as many insurance policies as we possibly can as far as our voice is concerned. Ben says, are we getting the scarves back in? I'll need to check up with the person who does the purchasing for us and see about that, but we may well. Thanks for raising that, Ben. Yeah. So Stephen says, well done, Robert, for winning the prize, as does McGregor. And Tommy says, well done. And Adam sums up, what future shall we have? A Scotland which is ripped out of the UK against our will, or stay in the UK and work together to take this country forward? That's what we're about, taking this country forward, all of us together. Absolutely. Okay, folks, it's been wonderful. Nelson says, another top show, Alistair. Thank you, Nelson, for watching. And Ryan says, keep up the good work. And thanks for your kind comments today, Ryan. Folks, we are going to say goodbye to you. Please do check out our shop, and also our Union Supporters Programme, if you can, if you are able to help, because we do need some help going forward on that. So folks, it just remains for me to say, God bless the United Kingdom. Thanks for watching, and God save the Queen. See you next week.